My name is Eleanor May Patterson, though most folks around here just call me Miss Ellie. I'm sitting here on my front porch in Willow Creek, same as I do every morning. Got my coffee, black, no sugar, and my old tabby cat Mabel purring beside me. The sun's just starting to paint the sky pink and gold, and if you listen real close, you can hear the cardinals singing their morning songs. Now, before we go any further, I want to thank y'all for being here with me today. If you find value in what I'm about to share, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Leave me a comment below. Sometimes knowing that my story reaches people far and wide, well, it gives me strength. I've lived in this little town for 40 years now. People see me at church socials, bringing my famous peach cobbler. They wave when I walk Mabel to the post office. They know me as the woman who taught Sunday school, who raised 3 beautiful children, who's been married to the same good man for 57 years. They see silver hair and weathered hands and what they call kind eyes. But what they don't see, what I've kept locked away for most of my life, is the little girl I once was. The little girl who learned too young that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who hurt you most. You see, I'm 83 years old now. That means I've had a lot of years to heal, to build a life, to find peace. But there are some things that mark you forever, like scars that ache when the weather changes. And today I'm going to tell you about those scars. People still ask me how I survived 5 years in hell. They don't ask it quite like that, of course. They're more delicate about it. How did you get through it, they'll say, or where did you find the strength? But what they really want to know is how a little girl can disappear from the face of the earth for 5 years. How a whole town can mourn her, hold memorials, declare her dead, and then one day just come back. I was 9 years old when my 4th grade teacher kidnapped me. 9 years old when everyone I loved thought I was gone forever. 9 years old when I learned that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the people you trust most. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. Let me tell you about the little girl I was before it all went wrong. Because that little girl, she matters too. She deserves to be remembered. It was 1950, and I lived in a town not too different from this one. Millfield, Pennsylvania, population 2,847. We had one main street, 2 churches, a school, and a diner where everyone gathered to share gossip over coffee and pie. My daddy worked at the steel mill 2 towns over, and my mama kept house and took in sewing to make extra money. I was an only child, which was unusual back then. Mama had lost 3 babies before me and 2 after, so when I came along healthy and squalling, she said I was her miracle. Eleanor May, she'd tell me, brushing my dark hair before bed, you're my answered prayer, don't you ever forget that. I loved school. Loved it with the kind of pure enthusiasm that only children can muster. I loved the smell of chalk and old books, the way my pencil felt in my hand, the satisfaction of getting a row of arithmetic problems all correct. I was a good student, not the best, mind you, but eager and hard-working. And then there was Miss Catherine Hartley. Miss Hartley, who would become the architect of my nightmares. She was new to town that year, fresh from some teaching college up north. 26 years old, unmarried, pretty in that refined way that made the other teachers seem dowdy by comparison. She wore her blonde hair in perfect victory rolls and always smelled of lavender water. The boys in class would elbow each other when she walked by, and the girls would practice copying her handwriting. But it was more than her looks that drew people in. Miss Hartley had this way about her, this warmth that made you feel like you were the most special person in the world when she looked at you. She remembered every student's birthday, knew all our favorite colors, asked about our pets and siblings and dreams. I can still see her now, clear as day, standing at the blackboard in her navy blue dress with the white collar, writing out sentences in her perfect Palmer script, turning to face us with that smile that lit up her whole face. Now, who can tell me the capital of Pennsylvania? And my hand shooting up, always so eager to please. Eleanor May, she'd say, and just hearing her say my name made me feel important. I just knew you'd know the answer. The other teachers liked her too. The principal, Mr. Davies, would actually smile when she walked into the teacher's lounge. Parents raved about her at PTA meetings. Finally, they'd say, a teacher who really cares about our children. If only they'd known what kind of caring she had in mind. Looking back now, I can see how perfect a target I was. A bright, eager little girl who craved approval. An only child whose parents both worked long hours. A student who stayed after school to help clean erasers and straighten desks because I loved being useful. But let me paint you a picture of who I was before. Before the fear, before the darkness, before I learned that trust could be a dangerous thing. Our house on Elm Street was small but tidy. White clapboard with green shutters that Daddy painted every other spring. We had a front porch with a swing that creaked when you pushed it, and a backyard where Mama grew tomatoes and snap peas. I had a rope swing hanging from the big oak tree, and I'd spend hours on it, pumping my legs and trying to touch the clouds with my toes. Inside, we had 3 bedrooms, though one was just Mama's sewing room. She'd sit in there for hours, bent over her singer, making alterations for the ladies in town. The whir of that machine was the soundtrack to my childhood. Even now, when I hear a sewing machine, I'm transported back to that little room with its shelves of thread and baskets of fabric scraps. My own room was my sanctuary. Daddy had painted it yellow, sunshine yellow, he called it, and Mama had sewn curtains with tiny daisies on them. I had a bookshelf full of Nancy Drew mysteries and fairy tales, a desk where I did my homework, and a bed with a quilt my grandmother had made. On the wall hung a sampler I'd stitched myself, Home Sweet Home, in crooked letters. I was a social child, though not popular in the way some girls were. I had my small circle of friends. There was Betty Lou Morrison, who lived 2 houses down and had the most beautiful collection of paper dolls you ever saw. We'd spend rainy afternoons cutting out clothes from the Sears catalog and making up stories for our dolls. Then there was Patricia Ann Cooper, Patty, whose father owned the hardware store. She was bold where I was cautious, always daring me to climb higher in the trees or wade deeper in the creek. "Come on, Eleanor May," she'd say, hands on her hips. "Don't be such a scaredy cat." And there was quiet little Mary Margaret O'Brien, who lived above the bakery with her parents and 6 siblings. She shared my love of books, and we'd trade them back and forth like precious treasures. We were typical girls of our time. We played hopscotch and jump rope, collected marbles and movie star photos, whispered about which boys we thought were cute. We had sleepovers where we'd paint each other's nails with clear polish, the only kind our mothers would allow, and practice putting our hair in pin curls. School was the center of our world. Millfield Elementary was a brick building that had stood since 1892, with high ceilings and tall windows that let in streams of dusty light. It smelled of floor wax and chalk and whatever was cooking in the cafeteria, usually something involving mystery meat and overcooked vegetables. My previous teachers had been nice enough. There was Mrs. Peterson in 1st grade, who taught us to read with Dick and Jane. Mrs. Garrett in 2nd grade, who had a voice like a rusty gate but gave out peppermints for good behavior. Mr. Jameson in 3rd grade, the only male teacher in the elementary school, who taught us multiplication tables by turning them into songs. But 4th grade was different from the very first day. Miss Hartley arranged our desks in a horseshoe shape instead of straight rows. She brought in potted plants for the windowsills and hung colorful maps on the walls. She played classical music while we did our silent reading and taught us about composers and artists, not just arithmetic and spelling. Education, she told us that first week, is about more than memorizing facts. It's about opening your minds to all the beauty and wonder in the world. She had us keep journals where we could write or draw whatever we wanted. She brought in her own books to supplement our readers, real novels, not just the simplified stories we were used to. She started a classroom library with a checkout system and made me the librarian because she said I was responsible and trustworthy. The attention she paid me was subtle at first, a hand on my shoulder when she looked at my work, choosing me to help distribute papers or clean the blackboard. "Eleanor May," she'd say, "you're such a helpful girl. I don't know what I'd do without you." My parents were thrilled with my new teacher. At dinner, I'd chatter about what Miss Hartley had taught us that day, and they'd exchange pleased looks over my head. "She sounds wonderful," Mama would say. "It's so nice to see you this excited about school." Parent-teacher conference night came in October. I remember Mama putting on her good dress and Daddy wearing his church tie. They came home glowing. "Miss Hartley says you're one of her brightest students," Mama told me, smoothing my hair. "She says you have real potential." Daddy nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "She offered to give you extra lessons after school, help you get ahead. What do you think about that, Pumpkin?" What did I think? I was over the moon. Extra time with Miss Hartley? It felt like being chosen for something special, like being seen as more than just another student in a class of 25. The extra lessons started the following week. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'd stay after school for an hour while Miss Hartley worked with me on advanced reading and arithmetic. She'd pull her chair close to mine, and we'd work through problems together. Sometimes she'd bring cookies she'd baked or hot chocolate in a thermos. "You're doing so well?" she'd tell me, her perfume, that lavender water, surrounding me like a cloud. "You're such a special girl, Eleanor May. Do you know that? So special." The other kids started to notice the attention I was getting. Some were jealous. Betty Lou stopped inviting me to play paper dolls as often. But I didn't care. I had Miss Hartley's approval, and that felt more important than anything. She started giving me little gifts. Nothing big or obvious. A bookmark with a tassel, a pencil with my name on it, a hair ribbon that matched my favorite dress. "Our little secret," she'd say with a wink. "We don't want the other children to feel left out." I kept those treasures in a shoebox under my bed, taking them out at night to look at them by flashlight. Proof that I was special. Proof that someone saw something in me worth nurturing. My parents met Miss Hartley again at the Christmas pageant. I was playing an angel, not the lead angel, just one of the chorus, but Miss Hartley made sure my costume was perfect, adjusting my tinsel halo herself. After the performance, she sought out my parents in the crowd. "Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan," she said, and I remember how my parents stood a little straighter when she approached. "Eleanor May did beautifully tonight. She's such a credit to you both." They chatted for a few minutes, about my progress, about the upcoming holiday break, about the unseasonably warm weather. Normal, pleasant conversation. Then Miss Hartley mentioned, almost casually, "You know I'm planning some educational field trips next semester. Museums, historical sites, that sort of thing. With your permission, I'd love to include Eleanor May. I think she'd benefit tremendously from the enrichment." "Oh, that sounds wonderful," Mama said immediately. "Of course she can go. How thoughtful of you to organize such things." "It's my pleasure," Miss Hartley replied. "Children like Eleanor May make teaching worthwhile. She's going places, mark my words." As we walked home that night, my parents' voices floated over my head in the cold December air. "What a dedicated teacher," Daddy said, "going above and beyond like that." "Eleanor May is lucky to have her," Mama agreed. "Not every teacher would take such personal interest." Personal interest. If only they'd known how personal that interest would become. But that night, walking between my parents with my angel costume rustling under my coat, I felt nothing but happiness. I was special. Miss Hartley said so. I was going places. I just didn't know yet where those places would be. It happened on a Thursday, April 13th, 1951. Funny how some dates burn themselves into your memory like a brand. I can forget what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I remember every detail of that day. The morning started like any other. Mama made oatmeal with a spoonful of brown sugar, just how I liked it. Daddy had already left for the mill. He worked the early shift that week. I remember Mama humming while she braided my hair, some tune from the radio. "Your hair's getting so long," she said, tying off the second braid with a rubber band. "Maybe we should trim it this weekend." I never did get that haircut. I walked to school with Patty and Mary Margaret, same as always. We played a half-hearted game of hopscotch in the schoolyard before the bell rang. I remember being distracted, though I couldn't say why. Maybe some part of me sensed what was coming. Or maybe that's just hindsight, trying to make sense of senseless things. The morning passed normally. Spelling test. I got them all right except necessary, which I always spelled with one C instead of two. Arithmetic problems on the board. Reading circle. where we were working our way through The Secret Garden. I loved that book, loved imagining myself as Mary Lennox discovering hidden wonders. Lunchtime came and went. Bologna sandwich, apple slices, and a cookie Mama had tucked into my lunch pail. I traded half my cookie for some of Betty Lou's crackers, a peace offering that seemed to thaw the coolness between us. Then came afternoon recess. This is where things get fuzzy, even now. Memory is a strange thing. It protects us sometimes by blurring the edges of our worst moments. I remember Miss Hartley calling me over while the other kids ran out to play. "Eleanor May," she said, "I have exciting news. Remember those educational trips I mentioned to your parents? Well, I've arranged a special one just for you. The County Historical Society has a new exhibit on pioneer life, and the curator agreed to give us a private tour this afternoon." My heart leaped. A special trip, just Miss Hartley and me? It felt like winning a prize I hadn't even known I was competing for. "But we need to leave right now to make our appointment," she continued, already gathering her purse and coat. "I've already cleared it with Principal Davies. I'll have you back before the final bell." I should have wondered why she hadn't told my parents. I should have noticed that she seemed nervous, checking her watch repeatedly, glancing toward the door. But I was 9 years old and trusted her completely. "Do I need to get my coat?" I asked. "No time," she said, wrapping her own shawl around my shoulders. "This will keep you warm enough. Come on, sweetie, adventure awaits." We went out the side door, the one by the gymnasium that was hardly ever used. Her car was parked there, a green Hudson that I'd admired many times. She opened the passenger door for me, and I climbed in, feeling very grown up. "This is so exciting," I remember saying as she started the engine. "Wait until I tell Mama and Daddy." "Oh, let's make it a surprise," she said, her voice bright but tight. "We'll tell them all about it at the next parent-teacher conference. Won't they be impressed?" We drove through town, past the diner where Mrs. Henderson was wiping down tables, past the post office where Mr. Garrett was sorting mail. Normal people doing normal things, not knowing that a little girl was being stolen right under their noses. "The Historical Society is farther than I thought," I said after we'd been driving for what felt like a long time. The familiar streets of Millfield had given way to country roads I didn't recognize. "Just a bit farther," Miss Hartley said. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Why don't you close your eyes and rest? I'll wake you when we get there." But I couldn't rest. Something felt wrong, though I couldn't name it. The sun was getting lower in the sky, and I knew afternoon recess had to be over by now. "Miss Hartley," I said, my voice small, "I think we should go back. The other kids will wonder where I am." "Don't worry about that," she said, but her voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something harder. "Everything's going to be fine." We drove for hours. I know that now, though at the time I lost track. The landscape changed from farmland to forest, from paved roads to dirt tracks. I had to use the bathroom but was too shy to say so. My stomach growled. Afternoon snack time had long passed. "Miss Hartley," I finally said, tears starting to form, "I want to go home." "You can't go home." The words came out flat, matter of fact. "I'm sorry, Eleanor May, but you can't go home anymore." That's when the fear truly hit. This wasn't a field trip. This wasn't an adventure. This was something else entirely. Something my 9-year-old mind couldn't fully grasp, but understood enough to be terrified. "Please," I whispered. "Please take me back. My mama will be worried." "Your mama doesn't deserve you," she said, and there was something wild in her voice now. "None of them do. They don't see how special you are, not like I do. But don't worry, I'm going to take care of you now. You'll see. Everything's going to be perfect." I started to cry then. Real tears. Not the careful tears I sometimes use to get my way, but desperate, frightened sobs. She pulled over on a dark road I'd never seen before and turned to face me. "Stop crying," she said sharply, then softer. "Please, Eleanor May, don't cry. This is for the best. You'll understand someday. You'll thank me." But I couldn't stop crying. I cried until I made myself sick, and she had to pull over again so I could vomit by the side of the road. I remember the taste of bologna and fear, the way my legs shook, the cold ground under my hands. Meanwhile, back in Millfield, the final bell had rung. Children poured out of the school, heading home in chattering groups. Patty and Mary Margaret looked for me, confused when they couldn't find me. Maybe her mama picked her up early, Patty suggested. But when they reached my house and knocked on the door, Mama answered with flour in her hair from making biscuits. "Is Eleanor May with you girls?" she asked. She knows to come straight home on Thursdays. The first tendrils of worry began then. Mama walked back to school with the girls, certain there was a simple explanation. A detention I'd forgotten to mention. An after-school project. Something. Principal Davies was still in his office. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, looking puzzled. "I thought Eleanor May went home sick. Miss Hartley said she was taking her to the nurse's office after lunch." "The nurse's office?" Mama's voice rose. "She wasn't sick this morning. Where's Miss Hartley?" But Miss Hartley's classroom was empty. Her car was gone from the parking lot, and when they checked her boarding house room an hour later, they found it stripped bare. No clothes in the closet. No personal items on the dresser. Even the sheets had been removed from the bed. By 6 o'clock, when Daddy got home from the mill, the police were involved. By 8 o'clock, search parties were forming. By midnight, the state police had been called in. The whole town mobilized. They searched the woods, the old quarry, the abandoned barns on the outskirts of town. They knocked on doors, asking if anyone had seen a green Hudson, a blonde woman, a little girl with dark braids. Mrs. Henderson at the diner remembered seeing Miss Hartley's car drive past that afternoon, heading out of town. "Thought it was strange," she said, wringing her hands. "School wasn't out yet." Mr. Garrett at the post office had seen it too. Going pretty fast, he recalled, like she was in a hurry. But after that, nothing. It was as if we'd vanished into thin air. They found my lunch pail in Miss Hartley's classroom, my arithmetic book open on my desk. They found the note I'd written to Betty Lou during silent reading, apologizing for being mean about her paper dolls. They found everything except me. Mama didn't sleep for 3 days. Daddy drove every back road in the county, calling my name until his voice gave out. The whole town prayed and searched and hoped. But I was already 2 states away, in a cabin in the mountains where no one would think to look, where no one would hear me cry, where Eleanor May Sullivan was about to disappear and someone else would be forced to take her place. The newspapers picked up the story. Local teacher kidnaps student. Massive search for missing girl. Parents plead for daughter's safe return. My school picture was printed in papers across 3 states. Gap-toothed smile, crooked bangs, the Peter Pan collar Mama had sewn on my dress. But pictures don't find missing children. Prayers don't always bring them home. Sometimes they just disappear, like smoke in the wind. And the people who love them are left with nothing but questions and what-ifs and a hole in their hearts that never quite heals. After 2 weeks, the active search was called off. After a month, the FBI took over the case. After 3 months, everyone except my parents started using past tense when they talked about me. She was such a sweet girl. She had so much potential. She loved to read. Had, loved. As if I was already gone, as if I was already dead. And in a way, I suppose I was. The cabin sat deep in the Tennessee mountains, so far from any road that you'd never find it unless you knew exactly where to look. Miss Hartley, though she told me I couldn't call her that anymore, had planned everything months in advance. Rented the place under a false name, stocked it with supplies, prepared a new life for both of us. "Your name is Catherine now," she told me that first night. "Catherine Hartley. You're my daughter, and we've always lived here. Do you understand?" I shook my head, still crying. "My name is Eleanor May Sullivan. I live in Millfield. I want my mama." She slapped me then. Not hard, but sharp enough to shock me into silence. It was the first time an adult had ever hit me. My parents didn't believe in corporal punishment. Even my teachers had never done more than rap knuckles with a ruler. "Your old life is gone," she said, her voice steady and cold. "The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Your name is Catherine. Say it." "Eleanor May," I whispered. Another slap. "Catherine, I want to go home." This time she grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. "You are home. This is your home now. I'm your mother now. Say it. Say yes, mother." I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat like stones. She was not my mother. Would never be my mother. My mother was in Millfield, probably crying, probably searching, probably— "Fine," she said, releasing me. "You'll learn. We have all the time in the world." The cabin was small but sturdy. 2 rooms, a main room with a kitchen area and a tiny bedroom. No electricity, just oil lamps. No running water, just a pump in the kitchen and an outhouse out back. The windows were high and small, and I soon discovered they were nailed shut. That first night, she made me sleep on the floor beside her bed. "Until I can trust you," she said. She'd attached a rope to my ankle, the other end tied to the bed frame. I lay there in the dark, feeling the rough boards under me, listening to her breathing slow into sleep. I tried to be quiet as I worked at the knot, but my fingers were clumsy with cold and fear. The rope was new and stiff, the knot pulled tight. I scraped my fingers raw, trying to loosen it, tasting blood when I put them in my mouth to soothe the pain. When morning came, she found the rope bloody from my efforts. "Oh, Catherine," she sighed, as if I'd disappointed her. "This doesn't have to be difficult. All I want is to take care of you, to give you the life you deserve." She cleaned my scraped fingers with iodine that burned like fire, wrapped them in clean cloth. Her touch was gentle, her voice soft. "There," she said when she finished. "All better. Now, what do we say?" I stayed silent. "We say, 'Thank you, Mother. Try it.'" Still, I said nothing. She sighed again. "You'll need to earn breakfast then. When you're ready to be my good girl, you can eat." She made oatmeal. I could smell it, see the steam rising from the bowl. My stomach cramped with hunger, but I pressed my lips together and turned my face away. "Stubborn," she murmured. "Just like I was at your age. You'll see, Catherine. You'll see that I'm right." The days blurred together in that cabin. She'd untie me during the day but watch me constantly. There was nowhere to run anyway. When I finally saw outside, it was nothing but forest in every direction. No roads, no paths, no sound but birds and wind. She'd brought supplies to last months. Canned goods lined the shelves. Sacks of flour and sugar sat in the corner. She'd thought of everything, clothes in my size, books for me to read, even some toys. A doll with yellow yarn hair sat on the bedroom dresser, staring at me with painted eyes. "I picked her especially for you," she said. "Every little girl needs a doll. What will you name her?" I wanted to throw the doll against the wall. Instead, I just turned away. The first week was a battle of wills. She'd cook meals and set them before me. "All you have to do is say, 'Thank you, Mother,' and you can eat." I refused. I'd never been a particularly stubborn child before, but something inside me hardened in that cabin. Some essential part of me that knew if I gave in on this, I'd lose everything. I ate when the hunger became unbearable, usually by the 3rd day, just enough to keep going. She'd watch me with those cool blue eyes, disappointed but patient. "You're only hurting yourself," she'd say. She tried different tactics, sweet cajoling. "Don't you want to make me happy? I've done so much for you." Stern discipline. Good daughters obey their mothers. Even tears. "Why won't you love me? I saved you from that ordinary life. I'm giving you everything." But I held on to my name like a lifeline. In my head, I repeated it over and over. "Eleanor May Sullivan. Eleanor May Sullivan. My name is Eleanor May Sullivan." After 2 weeks, she introduced school lessons. Just because we live simply doesn't mean you should neglect your education. She'd brought textbooks, paper, pencils. We sat at the rough wooden table, oil lamp between us, and she taught me as if we were back in her classroom. It was almost worse than the other parts. When she taught, she became Miss Hartley again, patient, encouraging, passionate about learning. For moments, I'd forget where we were. I'd raise my hand to answer a question, feel pride when I got it right. Then reality would crash back, and I'd hate myself for forgetting, even for a second. She made me write lines when I was bad. Which meant whenever I refused to answer to Catherine, refused to call her mother, refused to pretend this was normal, My fingers would cramp as I wrote the same sentence over and over. My name is Catherine Hartley. I am grateful to my mother. This is my home. Lies. All lies. But my hand wrote them anyway, filling page after page while she watched with satisfaction. The rope came off after a month, when she decided I understood there was nowhere to run. She was right. I'd seen outside by then, seen the endless forest, the absence of any trails. Even if I ran, where would I go? How would a 9-year-old girl survive alone in the mountains? Still, I tried once. It was early morning, and she was in the outhouse. I slipped out the door and ran blindly into the trees. Branches tore at my clothes, roots tripped me, but I kept running. I had no plan, no direction, just the desperate need to get away. I didn't last an hour. The forest was a maze, every tree looking like the last. I was lost within minutes, running in circles, crying and calling for help that would never come. When she found me, I was huddled under a pine tree, shivering and defeated. She didn't punish me, just took my hand and led me back to the cabin. "See," she said gently. "There's nowhere to go, Catherine. This is where you belong." That night, she brushed my hair, 100 strokes, counting each one aloud. "Your mother never took proper care of your hair," she said. "Look how tangled it gets. But don't worry. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of everything." I closed my eyes and pretended I was home. Pretended it was Mama's hands in my hair, Mama's voice counting. But the pretending hurt almost as much as the reality, so I stopped. She'd renamed me, but she couldn't remake me entirely. Not yet. I still dreamed of home every night. Still woke up expecting to see my yellow walls, my daisy curtains. The disappointment of waking in that cabin was fresh every morning, a wound that wouldn't heal. "Time," she'd say when she caught me crying. "It just takes time. One day you'll thank me for saving you. One day you'll see that this is better." But I knew, even then, that she was wrong. This wasn't better. This was a nightmare I couldn't wake from. A fairy tale where the witch had won and the princess was locked away forever, forgotten by everyone who'd ever loved her. "My name is Eleanor May Sullivan." I'd whisper into my pillow at night. "My parents are looking for me. Someone will find me. Someone will save me." But as weeks turned into months, and the leaves outside changed from green to gold to gone, that whisper got quieter. Hope, I learned, was like a candle flame. It could burn bright, but it could also be smothered. And she was very, very good at smothering flames. Time moves differently when you're trapped. The first year was marked by seasons, watching through those high windows as the world outside changed from summer to fall to winter to spring. But after that, the years began to blur together like watercolors in rain. By the time I turned 11, though she never acknowledged my real birthday, insisting I'd been born in June, not September, I'd learned to survive by splitting myself in two. There was the girl who answered to Catherine, who called her mother, who did the lessons and helped with chores. And there was Eleanor May, who lived deep inside where she couldn't reach, who remembered home and kept the truth alive. I developed rituals to keep Eleanor May safe. Every morning before she woke, I'd lie in bed and recite everything I could remember. My parents' names: Robert and Helen Sullivan. My address: 42 Elm Street, Millfield, Pennsylvania. My best friends: Betty Lou, Patty, Mary Margaret, my teacher before her, Mr. Jameson, who taught multiplication through songs. I'd picture Mama's face, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the flour in her hair when she baked. Daddy's hands, strong and gentle, the smell of his aftershave, the way he'd toss me in the air and call me pumpkin. These memories were my treasures, hidden deeper than she could ever dig. But memories fade when you can't refresh them. By year 3, I couldn't quite remember if Mama's eyes were green or hazel. Was it Betty Lou who had the paper dolls, or Mary Margaret? Did we have a yellow kitchen? Or was that just my bedroom? The uncertainty tortured me more than anything else she did. She'd moved us twice by then. Always at night, always to another isolated place, a farmhouse in Arkansas where the nearest neighbor was 10 miles away. Then, a cottage in the Oklahoma hills. Each move meant starting over, establishing new routines, learning new boundaries. "We have to be careful," she'd explain, though she never said of what or whom. "The world doesn't understand our special bond." By then, I'd stopped fighting openly. It took too much energy, and I'd learned to save my strength for the battles that mattered. I answered to Catherine. I called her mother. I did my chores and my lessons, but I never, ever forgot who I really was. She'd relaxed by then, too. Started taking me to town occasionally, always small towns where strangers were noticed but not questioned. I'd walk beside her in my homemade dresses, hair braided neatly, looking like any other daughter with her mother. "This is Catherine," she'd tell the shopkeepers. "She's shy." And I was shy, or silent, really. I'd learned that speaking to strangers brought punishment. Once, in a grocery store, I'd tried to slip a note to the cashier. "Help me," it said. "I'm Eleanor May Sullivan from Millfield, Pennsylvania." She'd found it before I could pass it over. That night, she'd cut my hair short as a boy's. "Since you can't be trusted to behave like a proper young lady," she'd said, scissors flashing in the lamplight. I'd watched my dark hair fall to the floor and felt like I was losing another piece of Eleanor May. The worst part was how normal she could make it seem. We'd have good days, even good weeks, where she'd be the Miss Hartley I'd adored. She'd teach me about poetry and art, read to me from classic novels, show me how to identify birds by their songs. We'd bake bread together, tend a small garden, work on sewing projects. In those moments, I could almost forget, almost pretend this was my life, that I'd chosen it. The human mind adapts to survive, and mine was adapting in ways that frightened me. Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing at something she said, or feeling proud when I mastered a difficult lesson, and the guilt would crash over me like a wave. Was I betraying my real parents by not fighting every second? Was I forgetting them? Was Eleanor May disappearing, replaced by Catherine inch by inch? I started hurting myself in small ways, just to feel something that was mine, biting my cheek until it bled, scratching my arms under the covers, pressing bruises I'd gotten from farm work. The pain was something she couldn't control, couldn't take away. It reminded me I was real, that this body belonged to Eleanor May, not Catherine. She never knew about that, but she knew I went somewhere she couldn't follow. "You're so quiet," she'd say sometimes, studying me with those cool blue eyes. "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing, Mother," I'd answer. And in a way, it was true. I was thinking about nothing, the nothing that was my real life, the void where my family should be. Newspapers were rare in our isolated homes, but sometimes I'd glimpse one in town. I'd scan desperately for any mention of Millfield, of a missing girl, of my parents, but there was never anything. The world had moved on. Eleanor May Sullivan was old news, a cold case, a tragedy that people had stopped talking about. Did my parents still look for me? Did they still hope? Or had they accepted what everyone else believed, that I was gone forever? The not knowing was agony. I created elaborate fantasies where Daddy was driving every back road in America, where Mama was showing my picture to everyone she met. But maybe they'd had another baby by now. Maybe they'd moved away from Millfield to escape the memories. Maybe they'd learned to smile again. I grew taller, my body changing in ways that confused and frightened me. She handled it with clinical detachment, explaining the facts of womanhood while providing the necessary supplies. But there was no comfort in it, no mother-daughter bonding. Just another way my body was betraying me, taking me further from the little girl who'd disappeared. By 13, I'd learned her patterns, her moods, her triggers. I knew when to be Catherine and when I could safely retreat into Eleanor May. I knew how to navigate her anger, how to earn her approval when necessary, how to be invisible when that was safer. We moved again, this time to Missouri. Another isolated house, this one near a lake. She taught me to swim that summer, patient and encouraging. "Every young lady should know how to swim," she said. I thought about drowning myself, letting the water fill my lungs and end this half-life. But even as I thought it, I was kicking, staying afloat. Eleanor May was a survivor, even when she didn't want to be. Fall came, and with it my 14th birthday, my real birthday, not the fake one she'd assigned me. I marked it silently, adding another year to my mental tally. 5 years gone. 5 years of my life stolen. But I was still here. Still Eleanor May under all the layers of Catherine she'd painted over me. That winter was particularly hard. She was going through what I now know was depression, though I didn't have words for it then. She'd stay in bed for days, leaving me to tend the fire, cook simple meals, keep the house running. Part of me thought about running during those dark days. But the deeper part, the survivor, knew better. I had no money, no identification, no proof of who I was, and it was winter in Missouri. I'd freeze before I found help. So I stayed. I survived. I kept Eleanor May alive in the only way I could, through memory, through pain, through the stubborn refusal to let her win completely. I was a ghost haunting my own life, but I was still there, still fighting in the only way I knew how. She came out of her depression as spring arrived, full of new plans. "We need a fresh start," she announced. "Somewhere with more opportunities for you, Catherine. You're becoming a young woman. You need culture, education, a chance to bloom." I nodded, playing my part. But inside, Eleanor May was screaming. Another move. Another house. Another year of captivity stretching ahead. How many more could I survive? How long before Eleanor May faded completely, leaving only Catherine behind? But then she said something that changed everything. "There's a town in Illinois I've been researching, big enough that we won't stand out, but small enough to feel safe. And Catherine," she paused, smiling, "they have a wonderful library. You'd like that, wouldn't you? A library, a public place. Books that might have newspapers, phone books, ways to contact the outside world." For the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. It was tiny, fragile as spider silk. But it was there. Eleanor May was still there. And maybe, just maybe, she was about to find a way home. The town was called Riverside, and it sat along the Mississippi like something out of a storybook. Tree-lined streets, Victorian houses, a main square with a bandstand. And right there on Main Street, a Carnegie Library built of red brick and hope. We moved into a small house on the edge of town. Not isolated this time, though the nearest neighbors were elderly and kept to themselves. She got a job at a private school as a tutor, which meant I was alone for hours each day. "You're old enough now," she said. "I trust you to keep house while I work." Trust. After 5 years, she trusted me. Or maybe she just believed she'd broken me completely. That first week, I cleaned and cooked and played the perfect daughter. But my eyes kept going to the window, to the street that led to town, to the library I could see from the attic window if I stood on my toes. The second week, she gave me a list and sent me to the grocery store. "Take your time," she said, counting out exact change. "It's a nice day for a walk." I walked to the store like a normal girl doing normal errands, bought milk and bread and the other items on her list, smiled at the cashier, said, "Thank you," in a voice rusty from disuse. And then, heart hammering, I walked past the library. Just past. Not in. Not yet. But close enough to see the hours posted on the door, the people going in and out, the normalcy of it all. The third week, I went inside. The smell hit me first, old paper and binding glue and that particular scent libraries have, like knowledge itself has an odor. Tears sprang to my eyes so suddenly I had to pretend to sneeze. "Bless you, dear," the librarian said. She was older, with silver hair pinned up and glasses on a chain. "Can I help you find something?" "Just browsing," I whispered. She smiled. "Take your time. The young adult section is upstairs if you're interested." Young adult. Because I was 14 now, not 9. 5 years of my life, gone. But I climbed those stairs on shaking legs and found myself in a quiet room full of possibilities. I didn't dare approach the desk, didn't dare ask for what I really needed, but libraries are full of information for those who look. I found the reference section, the phone books from different cities. My hands trembled as I pulled out the Pennsylvania directory. Millfield was too small to have its own listings, but I found the county section, and there, like a miracle, Sullivan, Robert, and Helen. still at 42, Elm Street. They hadn't moved. They hadn't given up. They were still there, still waiting. I memorized the number, repeating it in my head like a prayer. But how to call? She counted every penny, would notice if money went missing. And even if I found a phone, what would I say? Hello, Mama? It's me. I'm alive. Would they believe me? Would my voice even sound familiar after 5 years of silence? For weeks, I went to the library whenever I could manage it. I read everything I could find about missing children, about kidnapping cases, about girls who'd come home. The stories gave me hope and terrified me in equal measure. Some families fell apart. Some girls were never quite right again. Some found that home wasn't home anymore. But they were home. That was what mattered. It was a Thursday in October when everything changed. She'd been agitated all week, jumpy in a way I recognized. Usually, it meant we'd be moving soon. But this time felt different. She kept checking the windows, starting at sounds, burning papers in the sink. "Catherine," she said that morning, "I need you to stay inside today. Don't answer the door. Don't go to town. Promise me." I promised. Catherine always kept her promises. But Eleanor May had made no such vow. I waited until I heard her car disappear down the street. Then I put on my coat and walked to the library. Not browsing this time. Straight to the desk where the silver-haired librarian sat. "I need to make a phone call," I said. "It's an emergency." She must have seen something in my face because she didn't ask questions. Just led me to the office, pointed to the phone, and quietly closed the door. My fingers shook as I dialed. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Mama's voice. Older, tired, but unmistakably hers. The sound broke something inside me. "Mama?" The word came out cracked, barely audible. Silence. Then, "Who is this?" "It's me, Mama. It's Eleanor May." A crash, like she'd dropped something. Then a sound I'd never heard before. A wail that seemed to come from her very soul. "Number no, you can't. Eleanor May is gone. Who is this? Why are you?" "Mama, listen, please. It's me. I'm alive. She took me, Miss Hartley took me, but I'm alive and I need—" "Eleanor May?" A different voice. "Daddy." He must have taken the phone. "Sweetheart, is that really you?" "Daddy." I was crying now, 5 years of tears all at once. "Daddy, I want to come home." "Where are you? Baby, where are you?" "Illinois. Riverside, Illinois. But she'll be back soon, and if she finds out I called—" "We're coming. You hear me? We're coming right now." "Where exactly?" The office door opened. The librarian stood there, and behind her, 2 police officers. "Miss," one of them said gently, "are you Eleanor May Sullivan?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Your parents have been looking for you for a very long time." Later, I learned that the librarian had recognized something in my desperation, that she'd called the police the moment she closed the office door, that there had been bulletins about me for years, age-progressed photos, desperate pleas from my parents who refused to believe I was dead. They took me to the police station, gentle but urgent. "Where is she?" they kept asking. "Where is Catherine Hartley?" But I didn't know. She'd left for work same as always. It wasn't until they went to the house that they realized she was already gone. Clothes missing, personal items vanished, no trace except the life she'd built around me for 5 years. They never found her. Sometimes I wonder if she knew that morning, if she sensed the end coming, if that's why she'd told me to stay inside. A last attempt at keeping me, or maybe, and this thought haunts me, a final kindness, leaving the door open for me to walk through. My parents arrived the next morning. I heard them before I saw them, Mama's voice high and desperate, Daddy's deeper rumble. Then the door opened, and there they were. Older, grayer, worn down by grief. But when they saw me, their faces transformed. Mama made that sound again, that soul-deep wail, but this time it was joy mixed with the pain. She ran to me, stopped just short, as if afraid I'd disappear if she touched me. "Eleanor May," she whispered. "My baby?" I nodded and fell into their arms. They held me like they'd never let go, all 3 of us crying, shaking, trying to bridge 5 years in a single embrace. I breathed in their familiar scents, Mama's lavender soap, Daddy's aftershave, and felt Eleanor May fully surface for the first time in years. I kept trying to come home, I sobbed. I never forgot you. Never. We know, baby, Daddy said, his voice rough. We never stopped looking, never stopped believing. But even in that moment of reunion, I felt the weight of what stood between us. 5 years. Different people now. All of us. They'd grieved a 9-year-old girl, and here was a 14-year-old stranger who looked like her. I'd dreamed of parents frozen in time, but they'd aged a decade in 5 years, worn down by loss. The drive home was quiet. They'd brought clothes for me, guessing at sizes, getting everything slightly wrong. In the hotel that night, Mama sat on my bed and touched my face like she was memorizing it. We have your room just like you left it, she said. Your books, your dolls, everything waiting. But I wasn't that girl anymore. That Eleanor May had loved dolls and fairy tales. This one had survived 5 years of captivity. How could I fit back into that yellow room with its daisy curtains? How could any of us pretend those years hadn't happened? Still, when we pulled onto Elm Street and I saw our house, the same white clapboard, the same green shutters, something in me unclenched. Different or not, scarred or not, I was home. The whole town turned out. Banners, tears, Pastor Williams saying it was a miracle. Betty Lou, Patty, and Mary Margaret, teenagers now, hanging back awkwardly. Everyone wanting to celebrate the happy ending. But it wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. The beginning of learning how to be Eleanor May Sullivan again. The beginning of nightmares and therapy and jumping at unexpected sounds. The beginning of trying to fit back into a life that had gone on without me. They never found Catherine Hartley. She vanished as completely as she'd made me vanish, leaving nothing but questions and the wreckage of 2 lives, mine and hers. Because sometimes, in the quiet hours, I wondered about her too. What had broken in her to make her steal a child? What loneliness had driven her to such desperate acts? But those were thoughts for later. That first night, I lay in my old bed, in my yellow room, listening to my parents' voices drifting up from downstairs. Not words, just the sound of them, proof they were real. I was home. Changed, damaged, but home. Eleanor May Sullivan had survived. And that, I was learning, was its own kind of miracle. That was 69 years ago. 69 years since I walked out of that library in Riverside and back into the world. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like something that happened to someone else entirely. The years that followed my return weren't easy. I'd be lying if I said they were. That first year back home was like learning to walk again, except it was learning to be. Learning to be a daughter when I'd forgotten how. Learning to be a student when I was years behind. Learning to be Eleanor May when I'd been Catherine for so long. I had nightmares for years. Still do sometimes, if I'm honest. I'd wake up in that yellow room thinking I was back in the cabin, that home had been the dream. Mama would find me huddled in the closet, shaking, unable to remember where I was or when I was. School was impossible at first. Too many people, too much noise, too many eyes watching the girl who'd come back from the dead. They meant well, everyone in Millfield did, but their curiosity was suffocating. I'd catch them whispering, wondering what had happened to me, making up stories to fill the blanks I couldn't talk about. We moved after a year. Not far, just to the next county, but somewhere I could be Eleanor May Sullivan without the weight of being that poor girl who was kidnapped. Daddy found work at a different mill. Mama took a job at a bakery. We started over, all 3 of us, trying to build something new from the pieces of what we'd been. Therapy helped, though it took years to find the right person. Dr. Sarah Melrose, a woman who'd worked with other survivors, who understood that healing isn't a straight line. She taught me that surviving wasn't something to be ashamed of. That the things I'd done to endure, splitting myself in 2, going quiet, even calling her mother, were signs of strength, not weakness. You did what you had to do to survive, she told me. And you did survive. That's extraordinary. High school was better. I was quiet, studious, older than my classmates in ways that had nothing to do with years. But I found my place, found friends who didn't know my story, found teachers who nurtured the love of learning that even she hadn't been able to kill. I met my husband, James, when I was 22. He was patient, kind, with a laugh that could fill a room. I told him about my past on our 5th date, certain it would send him running. Instead, he took my hand and said, "That must have been terrifying. Thank you for trusting me." We married 2 years later in a small ceremony. Mama cried happy tears, and Daddy walked me down the aisle like he'd always dreamed he would. Normal moments that felt like miracles because there was a time I thought I'd never have them. The children came slowly, 3 of them over 10 years. Michael, Susan, and little Eleanor, though we called her Nora to avoid confusion. With each pregnancy, I was terrified. What if I didn't know how to be a mother? What if the only model I had was her? But the moment I held Michael, I knew. Real love doesn't trap or control or rename. Real love sets free. I was the mother I'd needed, protective but not suffocating, loving but not possessive. I made mistakes, plenty of them, but I never made my children doubt who they were or where they belonged. My parents lived to see their grandchildren grow up. Daddy passed when Nora was 15, Mama 2 years later. At her funeral, she held my hand and whispered, "I never stopped looking for you, not for one day." "I know, Mama," I told her. "I always knew." I became a teacher myself, though it took years to work up the courage. Elementary school, just like her. But where she had used teaching as a hunting ground, I used it as a place of protection. In 30 years of teaching, I must have had 1,000 children pass through my classroom. And I watched them all, looking for signs I'd missed in myself, the child who's too eager to please, too hungry for attention, too vulnerable to predators dressed as saviors. I couldn't save them all, but I saved some. Had difficult conversations with parents, made reports when necessary, created a safe space where children knew they could tell me anything. It was my way of balancing the scales, of taking something evil and turning it toward good. James passed 5 years ago. Cancer, quick like my father. My children worried about me alone in this house, but I'm not alone. I have Mabel, my books, my garden. I have a life full of memories, good ones that I made myself, that no one can take away. And now I have you, listening to this story I've kept mostly quiet for nearly 70 years. Why tell it now? Because I'm 83, and time is running short. Because there are still children disappearing, still predators wearing friendly faces, still parents who'll never stop looking. People ask me if I forgive her, Catherine Hartley, Miss Hartley, whatever her real name was. It's a complicated question. I understand now that she was sick, broken in some fundamental way. But understanding isn't forgiveness. She stole 5 years of my childhood, left scars that never fully healed, changed the trajectory of my entire life. How do you forgive that? What I've done instead is refuse to let her have more of me than she already took. I didn't let her steal my ability to trust, to love, to build a life. That's not forgiveness, but it's freedom. They never found her. For years, I'd jump at blonde women in crowds, certain I'd seen her. I'd dream of confronting her, of asking why. But those dreams faded as my life filled with better things. She became a ghost, a cautionary tale, a chapter in my story, but not the whole book. If you're watching this because you've lost someone, because your child is missing, let me tell you, don't give up. Don't stop looking. Don't let anyone tell you to move on or find closure. My parents' refusal to give up saved my life. Their hope was the lighthouse that guided me home. If you're watching because you survived something similar, know this: you're not broken. You're not damaged goods. You're a survivor, and that's a kind of strength most people can't imagine. The person you were before is still in there, maybe changed, maybe scarred, but still there. Still worthy of love and life and all good things. And if you're watching because you work with children, please look closer, listen harder, trust your instincts. The signs are there if you know to look. Don't be afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, to make those reports, to be wrong rather than silent. Better to offend an innocent adult than miss a child in danger. I think about the little girl I was, Eleanor May Sullivan, age 9, trusting and eager and full of dreams. She didn't deserve what happened to her. No child does, but she survived it. She grew up, fell in love, raised children, taught thousands of students, lived a full and meaningful life. That's the message I want to leave you with. Not just that I survived, but that I lived, really lived. The trauma is part of my story, but it's not my whole story. It's not even the most important part. The most important part is this: love wins. Not always right away, not without scars, but eventually. My parents' love brought me home. My husband's love helped me heal. My children's love showed me I could break the cycle. And my own love, for my students, for my family, for this life I built from ashes, that love is what made me whole. Catherine Hartley tried to rewrite my story. For 5 years, she held the pen. But I took it back. I wrote my own ending, and it's a good one. My name is Eleanor May Patterson, née Sullivan. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a widow, a retired teacher. I'm a survivor. I'm sitting on my porch in Willow Creek, watching the sun set over the town I chose to call home. Mabel is purring beside me. The cardinals are singing their evening songs. And I am free. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness. Now go, hug your children tighter, look at your students closer, trust your instincts better. Make the world a little safer for the Eleanor Mays out there, the ones still waiting to come home. And to any child watching who feels trapped, who thinks no one is looking for them, who's been told their old life is gone, hold on. Keep your true name alive inside you. Look for your chance. Someone loves you. Someone is looking for you. Someone is waiting for you to come home. You just have to survive until you can find your way back. God bless you all. And remember, every child deserves to be safe, to be loved, and to keep their own name.